Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today on this Facebook Live. I want to talk to you guys today about glyphosate. I had to do this Facebook Live today because I read an article about how glyphosate increases your cancer rate by 41% for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and other types of cancers. And this is just shocking to me. And I wanted to talk to you guys about this because I talk a lot about heavy metals and other types of toxins, but glyphosate is a huge problem. 85% of people test positive for glyphosate on tests. And so it's a huge problem that I wanted to discuss. And I have a lot of tips and tricks for you guys today that I want to discuss. And I also want to leave you guys a little comment here. The very first comment here on the Facebook Live is to learn more about GMOs and glyphosate. Click this link below. There's an amazing documentary that I highly recommend about where you'll learn about glyphosate and GMOs and how to protect your health. So just check that out. So today's Facebook Live is going to be about the latest study showing that glyphosate can increase your cancer risk by 41%. Number two, we're going to talk about the number one problem with GMOs, which is cancer causing glyphosate. Number three, where glyphosate is found and how you can avoid it, the foods that you need to avoid exactly, the top GMO foods on the planet, what you can do to avoid your cancer risk, and how does exactly glyphosate make you sick? Well, essentially, glyphosate destroys your gut bacteria. It's an antibiotic, and it destroys gut integrity, which causes leaky gut, and that ultimately destroys your immunity. People develop food sensitivities, asthma, allergies, autoimmune disease, etc., because of these effects, and then cancers also that we're going to talk about today. So if any of you guys have any questions whatsoever, I'm not leaving here until I answer all of your questions about glyphosate and the concerns around glyphosate. And so you guys just let me know, are you guys concerned about glyphosate in your foods? Are you eating conventional produce that has glyphosate pesticides residue in it? Just leave the number one in a comment below. Are you concerned about the cost of organic foods so that you can avoid GMO foods? Just leave me any comments that you have that you want me to answer today before I leave. So number one, let's go over this study that prompted me to do this Facebook Live. There was a study published in the journal Mutation Research. Sounds, really good reading. But the researchers from the University of Washington evaluated existing studies. So it was a meta-analysis where they took a bunch of different studies and analyzed them. And they did these studies into the chemical that they were able to find, the published research, because remember, Monsanto, who's now owned by Bayer, that makes glyphosate insecticide, or not insecticide, it's an herbicide. They actually actively go out and will try to unpublish research, take research off the internet, get it out of journals when it's published. They'll try to discredit the researchers doing GMO and glyphosate research. So it's really not that easy to find published research about glyphosate. So these researchers use the existing studies that were available, and they found that the weed killers, the herbicides, including Monsanto's popular Roundup, it's called Roundup Ready Weed Killer, which you can go buy at Home Depot. Your neighbor's probably using it on their driveway to kill weeds. It's also called glyphosate. They found that it concluded that this product, glyphosate, significantly increased the risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It's a cancer of the immune system. And so the authors of the University of Washington report analyzed all the published studies on the impact of glyphosate on humans. The co-author and doctoral student Rachel Schaffner said in a statement, "This research provides the most up-to-date analysis of glyphosate and its link with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, incorporating a 2018 study of more than 54,000 people who worked as licensed pesticide applicators." So these are the people that are going to have like the highest exposure to glyphosate and other types of pesticides. And so what is non-Hodgkin lymphoma? So this is a group of blood cancers that includes all types of lymphoma except Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's why it's called non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The symptoms include enlarged lymph nodes, fever, night sweats, weight loss, and tiredness. And lymphomas are types of cancers that develop from lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell. So it's an immune system cancer. And in 2015, the World Health Organization for International Agency for Research on Cancer classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans. And glyphosate recently has triggered multiple lawsuits from people who believe that exposure to this herbicide caused their non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And thousands of people are currently suing Monsanto, that's now known as Bayer. Bayer purchased Monsanto. So there's thousands of people currently with lawsuits against this company claiming that their cancers, were caused by glyphosate, their Roundup Ready herbicide. And so one high profile case against Monsanto was that of Dwayne Johnson. You might have heard about him on Facebook. He's a former groundskeeper that was spraying glyphosate on the parks and whatnot. And he was diagnosed with terminal non-Hodgkin lymphoma in 2014. In August 2018, a judge ordered Monsanto to pay Johnson $289 million in damages. And that was subsequently reduced to $78 million after Monsanto appealed. But nonetheless, this is a groundbreaking case because people are getting, the word's getting out that Monsanto, that is creating this glyphosate Roundup Ready weed killer, is harming people. They also knew that they were harming people. They produced it. They've had decades of research, internal memos, and all kinds of documents that came up in this lawsuit proving that they knew they were producing billions of pounds of glyphosate every single year that gets dumped onto crops and then into our food supply, into the water, into the soils, and that's getting into us. And so even if you're eating organic foods, glyphosate can still be on the organic foods. It can still be on it because of cross-contamination, where if there's an organic farm, certified organic, next to a conventional farm that's spraying glyphosates using genetically modified seeds and crops, if they're spraying that with a plane, the glyphosate there's wind, can get on the farm next door. So it's, eating organic food is a massive, massive improvement, dramatic reduction in exposure to pesticides, but 7% of organic foods do still have pesticide residues on them. So I'm not real happy about that. So Michelle, thanks for joining us. So Michelle's saying, I'm not 100% concerned about the cost of organic food because I'm either going to spend money at the farmer's market or at the doctor's office. Yes, I 100% agree with you. And I'd rather get in front of the curve to prevent illness than spending thousands finding and treating illness with a functional medicine doctor who spends time with you but doesn't really participate in insurance plans. Yeah, once you get sick, it's very, very expensive, or it can be, to get better. So I'm all about, prevention. You want to be thinking about these things, reducing the ingestion of toxins, reducing your toxic load before you get sick, before you get a diagnosis. You've got to be thinking about this stuff. And Amrita, thanks for joining me. So my husband and I have deleted as much as possible in our foods no grains in our diet, only organic everything, very little processed foods, no wine, only organic and pastured fed meat. But now we're learning about drift and what an issue that is. Yes, I hear you. Penny, thanks for joining us. I eat organic most of the time and try to eat out at places that source high quality food. Me too. I almost eat everything at home because if you are going out to a restaurant, you're going to be exposed to, almost every GMO crop out there that contains glyphosate. So if you're eating any processed foods or fast foods at most conventional restaurants, you're going to be exposed to genetically modified corn or corn oil, genetically modified soybean oil, genetically modified cottonseed oil, which is used in most places to fry food. You're going to be exposed to genetically modified canola oil that's used for cooking as well as margarine. You're going to be exposed to genetically modified alfalfa, which all of the cows eat, that's being served in the beef. If you eat beef, they're all fed GMO corn and soy and alfalfa. Half of the sugar in the United States is from genetically modified sugar beets. So half of the granulated sugar that's in any of the sweets that you eat that are conventional are GMO. If you eat papayas like me, if they're not organic, they're genetically modified. All the squash and zucchini, the Arctic apples, even potatoes, any potatoes sold under the name white russet potatoes are genetically modified if they're not organic. And there's a lot of foods that are likely soon to be widespread or because of known instances of contamination from GMOs. These foods that you want to be avoiding that are, if they're not organic, are flaxseed, the camelina, which is the false flax, mustard, rice, wheat, mushrooms, oranges, pineapples, salmon, sugarcane, and tomatoes. So all of those are GMO or they're coming down the pipelines. You want to be on high alert for those foods as well. And so let's just talk about what is a genetically modified organism, because where glyphosate is found, you find that's where GMOs are found. Because so GMO foods are modified so they can withstand glyphosate and other types of pesticides. So those foods, or the glyphosate's killing the weed, but it leaves the food unharmed. And so, theoretically. So genetically modified organisms are living organisms whose genetic material has been artificially manipulated in a laboratory through genetic engineering. So this creates combinations of plant, animal, bacteria, and virus genes that do not occur in nature or through traditional crossbreeding methods. Because in the past, people wanted a variety of potato or a variety of pepper. They just would do crossbreeding until they got the traits that they wanted, be it that the food travels better, it stays on the shelf longer, it looks glossier, or whatever. They would just breed that into it. Now they're like, they don't want to wait for that. They're just, crossbreeding bacteria and viruses and animals and plants and crossbreeding those genes and creating genetically modified organisms. Yum, yum. So most GMOs have been engineered to withstand direct application of herbicide and or to produce an insecticide. So corn, BT corn, actually produces an insecticide that kills a beetle or a bug that tries to eat the corn and destroy the crop. And so, however, new technologies are now being used to artificially develop other traits in these plants, such as a resistance to browning in apples, and to create new organisms using synthetic biology. But despite the biotech industry promises, there's no evidence that any of the GMOs currently on the market offer increased yield, drought intolerance, enhanced nutrition, or any other consumer benefits, certainly not finding the cure for world hunger. And so these are some of the promises that we've been, as consumers, been led to believe that these are, some of the arguments for unleashing GMOs into our environment. But the reality is all the glyphosate that is dumped onto these crops causes cancer. It's shown in the research in this meta-analysis study that was published and in the news today. So Melanie, so even organic. So everything I'm talking about is conventional produce. So organic foods are not GMO. They're not allowed to have glyphosate or other pesticides sprayed onto them, but they can suffer from cross-contamination where you have pollen from GMO that can cross into an organic crop, or you could have glyphosate or other pesticides sprayed on a conventional crop, then carried by wind and cross-contaminate organic crops. So you're not 100% safe even with organic, but because there's 7% of organic crops have pesticide residues on them, but it's much, much better, much, much greater reduced exposure than conventional crops. So let's talk about some of the top foods you want to avoid in your diet if you want to be healthy. So these are some more foods. These are the top 12 foods that have high amounts of glyphosate and other pesticides. So we want to avoid these. So strawberries, these are very delicate fruits that contain between 10 to 22 pesticides. 22 pesticides. I won't go near conventional strawberries ever. Spinach, conventional spinach can have relatively high concentrations of permethrin, which is a neurotoxic insecticide. Apples, 80% of apples contain diphenylamine, a pesticide banned in Europe. And you want to avoid nectarines. You want to avoid grapes. So ladies, that means that includes your wine, because grapes contain an average of 5 pesticide residues, and 96% of grapes tested positive for pesticides, including glyphosate. So for me, if I drink wine, I only drink organic wine. I buy occasionally, once or twice a month sometimes. But especially in California, almost all the wines tested had glyphosate in them. And a lot of them will also have fluoride. The pesticides can have fluoride, and that can block your thyroid function because fluoride competes with iodine to get into your thyroid to make thyroid hormones. So peaches are another crop you want to avoid if it's not organic. Cherries, 30% of cherry samples contained iprodion, pesticide not allowed in Europe, which may cause cancer. You want to avoid pears, conventional tomatoes, conventional celery. There's almost 13 pesticides have been detected on some conventional samples of celery, and then conventional potatoes, which we already mentioned. So a lot of different foods. That's considered the dirty dozen, the foods with the highest amounts of pesticides on them, including glyphosate. So let's talk about what you can do to reduce your cancer risk. So if you are ingesting glyphosate, if you are eating a lot of conventional foods, conventional produce that's not organically grown, then you're gonna, you run the risk of cancers later in life. And we all have someone in our life that has developed cancer of one type or another. So we really need to be thinking about all these different types of toxins that can be causing genetic mutations in our bodies that are increasing our cancer risk. So if you want to learn more about this, my very first link in the comments is to a GMO documentary. It's called GMOs Revealed, and we'll give you tons of information, the latest research, the world's top experts on GMOs, and give you lots of tips and tricks to reduce your exposure and protect your health and the health of your family. So click on that link. It's totally free. That's why I'm doing this. I want to give you guys free resources to protect your health and learn more about it. You've got to learn this stuff, because even when you are studying health a lot, you're studying food, you still have to constantly remind yourself of the dangers of some of the foods you're eating and toxins in your environment, and avoiding toxins, because it's difficult to stay on track. It can be challenging to do all the things you need to do, make the right choices. Every single bite of food you put in your mouth, every single product that you can buy, you have to constantly be reminded to make the right choice and stay on the path, because it's challenging. And it can help to have kind of a refresher like this to really remind yourself of why you're spending all this money on food that you are and attempting to detox. So there was one thing you can do is avoid conventional produce. So there was a groundbreaking peer-reviewed study published also this week in the journal Environmental Research that found that switching to an organic diet significantly reduced the levels of synthetic pesticides found in all participants after less than 1 week. On average, the pesticide and pesticide metabolite levels detected dropped by 60% after just 6 days of eating an all-organic diet. So it's amazing. You really can dramatically reduce your risk by going organic. And even shopping at Whole Foods isn't enough these days, because say if you walk into a Whole Foods today, the majority of the products are not organic. A lot of them say non-GMO project on them, which is great. That means they're going to have less glyphosate, or, no glyphosate on them, but they can still have pesticides. They're not organic. So you have to be a very, very savvy consumer when shopping. Grass-fed meat is pasture raised, but that doesn't mean it's organic. It can still have hormones. It can still have GMO feed to finish it. So you have to be very, very careful in the choices that you make. And so let's talk a little bit about some more of the foods, genetically modified foods that have glyphosate sprayed on them. So number one is corn. So genetically modified corn turns up in different products in the US. Corn on the cob is the least of it. Corn is used to produce many different ingredients used in processed foods and drinks, including high fructose corn syrup and cornstarch used in baked goods. But the bulk of genetically modified corn grown around the world is used to feed livestock. Then there are soybeans. Soybeans is the second largest U.S. crop after corn, and GMO soy is used primarily in animal feed and in soybean oil. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how many restaurants I've been to or the food counter at Whole Foods, and you have these, this beautiful vegetables or this stir fry, looks super, super healthy, but it's made with soybean oil or canola oil. And it's just the food and vegetables are just drenched in this genetically modified oil that's full of glyphosate and pesticides. So here you are thinking you're eating this super healthy food, but it's really this glyphosate inflammatory industrial seed oil that's just, the vegetables have just all completely been soaked in. So you have to be very aware of that. So soybean oil accounts for 61% of Americans' vegetable oil consumption. So it's also in as an emulsifier called soy lecithin, which is used in a lot of processed foods, including dark chocolate bars and candy. So lecithin emulsifiers is what helps to keep fats and waters and liquids kind of mixed together so that, the products don't separate, like liquid products don't separate, because people don't like that. They want everything to stay mixed and whole. Like a lot of nut oils, nut milks rather, have emulsifiers in them. And then cotton, much of the GMO cotton is turned into cottonseed oil, which is used for frying in restaurants and packaged foods like potato chips and oily spreads like margarine. And then canola oil is used for cooking oil as well as margarine, which is fake butter. I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe people are still buying, I can't believe it's not butter, thinking that's heart healthy. It's completely insane. My mom's husband is, going to his cardiologist, and the cardiologist is telling him to not eat butter, to instead eat, I can't believe it's not butter. And it's the most inflammatory, heart destroying food imaginable. So canola is also used as an emulsifier and used in packaged foods, processed foods. And 90% of canola grown in the US and Canada is genetically modified. And then alfalfa, we talked about how that is used as GMO beef feed. It's used for cattle. So if you're eating beef that's conventionally grown, that's not organic, you're eating GMOs, and you're also eating glyphosate that's in their connective tissue, because when they're eating this food, the glyphosate starts depositing in their fat cells, the deposits in their connective tissue and like fatty areas of the meat. And so guess what? You're having a plate of glyphosate with that. And then sugar beets, more than half the granulated sugar in the US is from GMO sugar beets. And so any kind of like ice cream you're eating, cookies, if you're eating any of that, any kind of desserts you're eating, donuts, whatever, people eat that sometimes, even though they're trying to be healthy. If it's not organic, it's made with GMO sugar beets, most likely. And then I mentioned zucchini and squash, Arctic apples, and potatoes, white russet potatoes. Avoid those like the plague. And it's interesting, I talked over the holidays, over Thanksgiving, that my mother gave up her son for adoption. When she was a teenager, she had a child and gave him up for adoption. And we found each other because I did a 23andMe genetic test, and so did he. And then we got connected, and I met with him. But we first talked on the phone. We had an initial phone conversation before I met him at Thanksgiving last year. And when he's a cotton farmer, he works on a cotton farm in Texas. And the first time we spoke on the phone, he was mixing glyphosate without any protection whatsoever. No gloves, no respirator mask, no suit to protect him at all. And we were talking, and he was just mixing the chemicals to spray them on the cotton farms. And I've been trying to, I mentioned to him, it's probably not the best idea. Maybe the person you're working for needs to provide you with some safety equipment, because this glyphosate will get on your skin and soak in. And he could be one of the statistics that's in this study that I'm talking about today from the University of Washington, that is studied 54,000 people that worked as licensed pesticide applicators, because he's doing this every single year, working on this cotton crop. And so that just kind of was just such a dichotomy that here I am, this detox expert, and talking to my brother who's mixing glyphosate. So I had a little education to do with him, a little work to do on him. So I'm still working on it, because as we all do when you guys are health nuts and trying to work on your health, and we have to educate our friends and educate our family and educate other people, even our spouses that may not share our passion for being healthy and eating healthy. And it can be a real struggle. It's part of the reason why I divorced my ex-husband, is because I was a chemical phobe and toxin phobe, and he was a germaphobe, which made zero sense to me whatsoever. And we were always, bickering about it. And it just, among other things, broke us up. And so let's talk about how glyphosate makes you sick exactly. Like, how is it causing these lymphomas? So basically, glyphosate destroys your gut. It destroys your gut bacteria. It destroys your gut integrity, causing leaky gut, and ultimately your immunity. And if you don't have a healthy immune system, your immune system is not going to protect you when you develop a mutated cell that could grow into a cancer. And so for any of you guys just joining me, you guys can watch the replay of this at any time. As soon as I'm done, the replay will be available, so you can watch it all over again. But essentially, we're talking about the latest study that shows that glyphosate can increase your cancer risk by 41%. The number one problem with GMOs is that cancer-causing glyphosate. This glyphosate is sprayed on GMO conventional crops, not only to kill weeds, But right before they harvest these crops, typically, especially wheat, they spray glyphosate all over the crop to dry it out a little bit, to desiccate it. It's used as a desiccating agent because that makes it easier to harvest. Great, but it's also completely soaked in glyphosate. So wheat is one of the worst products you can eat. You want to avoid wheat like the plague if you like the conventional wheat, because in cereals made with wheat, because those are extremely high in glyphosate, like Stacy's pita chips, Honey Nut Cheerios, and other products, even oatmeals, are being shown to be extremely high in glyphosate. So want to be careful about avoiding those also. We also talked about where glyphosate is found and how you can avoid it, the top GMO foods to avoid in your diet, what you can do to avoid your cancer risk, avoiding all these foods I mentioned in today's lecture. And so let's get to the finale, which is, how glyphosate makes you sick. So glyphosate is originally created as an antibiotic. So it kills bacteria. So when you're ingesting this glyphosate, it's going into your gut microbiome and destroying it. And your gut microbiome is a significant part of your immune system. The newer research is showing that's why everyone is talking about gut health, and all the health experts out there that you guys follow, all talking about gut health. And I have to give Donna Gates credit. She's one of the first people talking about gut health. And a lot of work with Weston Price also talking about that. But Dr. Natasha Campbell talking about gut health as well. But now everyone's talking about it because you have to have a healthy gut microbiome, a healthy balance of bad bacteria to good bacteria in order to absorb your food, break down your food, and have a healthy immune system. So when glyphosate is going in, killing your good gut bacteria, the bad guys can overgrow. And then you can have, you have a very thin lining of your intestinal wall. So this is your intestinal wall. It's one cell thick. And so if you have a lot of bad gut bacteria working on that gut lining, you can get these perforations. Then add on top of that other insults to that gut lining, antibiotics. You can have any kind of NSAIDs like Advil. Those are like grenades to your gut lining, causing holes. If you're smoking cigarettes, heavy metals, other chemicals and pesticides, stress, there's so many different things that can contribute to leaky gut and holes in the lining of your gut. And then large particles of food will then get through, and bacteria, and will get through these holes in your gut and get into your bloodstream and cause immune system overreaction, food sensitivities, allergies, asthma, autoimmune diseases, and cancers. And we can see beginning in the 1990s, I almost copied and pasted a graph here in the comments, but in the 1990s, they say this is the graph. The early 90s, they were beginning the planting of GMOs. So it's increased. And you can see an exact same line, increase of allergies, asthma, autoimmune diseases, and cancers, almost the exact same spectrum, exactly correlated. And we know correlation does not mean causation, but there's so much research out there, and there's just this uncanny correlation between GMO plantation, the increase of the release of glyphosate into our atmosphere, and the rise of disease and allergies and asthma and autoimmune disease in our society. And there's billions of glyphosate unleashed into our environment every single year. It's just absolutely shocking, the amount that's released. And it's sprayed not only on our food, it's sprayed, it's a #1 selling weed killer that people buy for their gardens. It's being sprayed on all the parks. It's being sprayed in your schools where your children are playing. It's being sprayed at office buildings, city, property, any kind of government buildings. It's just sprayed everywhere without really any thought at all as to the health consequences of this. So back to how glyphosate destroys your health. When you have all these food particles, you have this leaky gut, and you have these food particles and bacteria and toxins now leaking into your blood system, your immune system is going, what is going on here? And develops an immune system reaction to foods, to metals, which you can get allergies to, and to other bacteria, bad bacteria that are floating around in your bloodstream now where it's not supposed to be. And then people get all kinds of strange symptoms, all kinds of strange things happening. And I have so many clients coming to me with food sensitivities. Some people can only eat a handful of foods. They have all kinds of immune system problems and can develop autoimmune disease. Like I mentioned, autoimmune diseases are the fastest growing subset of diseases in the world today. And people also develop, like I mentioned, a lot of different cancers when their immune system is just overwhelmed by all these toxins in the bloodstream, overwhelmed by heavy metals and chemicals, and the immune system just becomes fatigued. And then cancer cells, it's estimated we have 100 million cancer cells at any time in our body. When these cancer cells are these mutated cells that are not supposed to be in our body, they are just, cells that have mutated for many, many different reasons. Cadmium is a heavy metal, which is a big cause of mutated cells. When the immune system is fatigued and not operating properly, not responding properly, then that cancer cell, that cell can be allowed to grow into a tumor, be it benign or malignant. And that's kind of the genesis of how so many cancers are developing in our society. Our immune systems are fatigued, malnutritioned, stressed. They are otherwise occupied with all these issues in our gut. And that's why so many people are falling prey to cancer. So let's answer some of your pressing questions. So Margie, the Ban Toxic Pesticides Act of 2019, contact a representative to ask they vote to ban pesticides. Yes, unfortunately in the US, our government is really the slave of big business, big agri, big pharma, big corporations. In Europe and even Russia, their citizens are more protected. There's so many more protections for foods, for pesticides, for chemicals. There's so many products, substances and chemicals and pesticides that are banned in Europe. They're perfectly fine here because our government just is not protecting us. You have to protect yourself. You have to vote with your dollars. So Peggy, so pesticide drift is what the air, water, and soil carry from the actual targeted application. And pesticides also make toxic vapors from volatile toxins that you breathe in that probably contaminate water and soil also. Hot weather applications usually release more toxins into the air. And let's also talk with Michelle. So Wendy, so this is great. Are you going to reference EWG Environmental Working Group, who is a watchdog in DC, who has the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen list each year to help people decide which produce is essential to buy organic or not on a budget? Yes. So that's what I talked about earlier in the talk today, was the Dirty Dozen. It's the EWG Environmental Working Group, Dirty Dozen. And so that is what I talked about with the strawberries, the spinach, the apples, nectarines, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, and potatoes. You never, ever, ever want to eat that produce conventionally because there are so many pesticides on them. And they also have a Clean 15. If you go to ewg.org, you can download a lot of the different resources and guides they have, which are amazing resources. But if you want to learn more about glyphosate and what you can do to protect yourself, click the link below here in the comment section. And there's also a free documentary that I am going to paste a link to here that I want you guys to check out. It's just such an amazing documentary called GMOs Revealed. I recently interviewed Dr. Patrick Gentempo on the Myers Detox podcast. There's a link to that if you guys want to check that out as well. I'm going to post a link to that also. It's an amazing podcast that I did with Dr. Patrick Gentempo. Let me just paste that right here. So if you want to learn more and get a little like teaser about his GMOs Reveal documentary, I have so much respect for him because he also did the vaccines reveal, because there's glyphosate also in vaccines of all things, to add insult to injury. And he's coming up soon with supplements revealed. So that'll be really interesting. So I'm gonna look forward to. So there's tons of glyphosate in conventional ingredients that are found in a lot of supplements. But I am losing my voice. I've had such a good time on this Facebook Live and very, very passionate about this topic because it's so important to bring awareness to people about the choices you're making with every single bite of food that you are feeding yourself and feeding your family. You've got to make smart choices because what Peggy said, you're either going to pay now for spending more money on food and clean water, making better choices, or you are going to be paying the doctor and buying medications and in the old folks' homes sooner than you expected. So you're going to pay at some point. So it's better to pay now and live a better quality of life as long as possible. That's my goal. That's what I want to help you guys do too, with all the research I do every day and things that I work every day to educate you guys about how to make the best choices. So thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any other questions, please leave more comments on this Facebook Live and we will answer them. I will answer them for you. Oh, so Neeks, how are you? So what foods or supplements will help with leaky gut? So that's a very good question. So number one, you want to take a binder like my CitraCleanse, a binder. A binder is something that's going to absorb toxins and prevent them from causing leaky gut. There's a lot of metals and a lot of chemicals, including glyphosate, that can be absorbed by the modified citrus pectin in my CitraCleanse binder. And that's going to be really, really helpful first step. It also gets into your bloodstream and cleans up your bloodstream as well. Leaky gut can also be healed with bone broth. I also really like Dr. Zach Bush's Restore supplement. That's amazing. Also, people really, really like glutamine. But if you take too much glutamine, that can prevent the absorption of other amino acids. So we don't want to OD on glutamine, though for some people it's very, very helpful to repair their gut. I also love Nest Health Bioenergetics. It's a bioenergetic program we offer on myersdetox.com because that is really helpful for repairing the gut and on an energetic level, which helps to correct physical functioning and repair the body physically. So that's really an incredibly important thing that I offer to people and recommend to clients, especially if they have severe immune system reactions. Their immune system is just gone haywire because of all the improper stimulation that people get from having leaky gut and from vaccines and from all the different toxins and chemicals in our environment. Many people are just so far gone. It's not as simple as just repairing their leaky gut. We need to also correct and redirect their immune system functioning. And our Nest Health Bioenergetic program is one of the best ways to do that. It's not as simple as taking zinc and vitamin C to fix your immune system, which I think a lot of you guys, if you have immune system issues, you've discovered it's not so simple to correct immune system functioning and to heal your leaky gut. So those are some of my recommendations for that. And so that's about it. That's about all your questions. Okay, Marjorie, so can I use the My Health for stomach issues? Yes, you can. For the My Health, there's just setting on it. That's a bioenergetic device. I don't have mine here. I have it near my bed. But it's a little device that one can use to kind of manipulate your body energetically to get physical benefits. And so the MyHealth definitely can be used for stomach issue. There's a digestion setting that can help if you have a stomach ache. There's a stomach setting, but it's best to do a nest scan to find out what settings that you need to use on your MyHealth. I just did my Nest Health scan yesterday, and did have a little folder on my MyHealth, ordered my infoceuticals, and it's a bioenergetic program. I've been doing it for about 2 years, and highly, highly, highly recommend it for people with any kind of health issue they're looking to address, including emotional trauma. So I don't want to veer too far off the topic of glyphosate and GMOs, but if you guys want to learn more, just click these links below to these resources to watch GMOs Revealed. So you'll learn all about GMOs and glyphosate from the world's foremost experts on the subjects. You'll learn about the latest studies, the latest things that how GMOs and glyphosate harm your health, and also all the things you can do to help your health and detox from glyphosate. Lots of tips and tricks in this documentary about how to detox from glyphosate. It's not really something that's really all that common on the internet. I did a podcast with Dr. Stephanie Seneff on how to detox glyphosate, and it's one of the top videos that I have on YouTube. But if you click on this link below for absolutely free, you can watch about how to detox glyphosate from your body, because 85% of you guys have glyphosate in your body. So I don't even bother testing clients for glyphosate. I just automatically assume that they have it because it's so prevalent in our environment. It's almost impossible to avoid it. So I'm losing my voice. So that's all for me for today. So thanks so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure educating you guys, and love that you guys are joining me. We're going to be doing tons more Facebook Lives. I may be moving to doing daily Facebook Lives on different topics, just because I just have so much fun doing this. So thanks so much for joining me, and I will talk to you guys very soon. I'm doing a Facebook Live next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, on brain health and the truth about all those brain supplements and if they're really helping your brain function. So don't forget to tune in Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on facebook.com/Myers Detox. Thanks for joining me. Have a great weekend.